This is A.T., and this here is Charlie Goldman, the trainer who built Rocky Marciano. Goldman was raised in Brooklyn's very unfriendly Red Hook section, and he learned to fight there despite being pretty short, about 5 feet to 5 feet 1 inch. He weighed not much more than 100 pounds. In 1903, he's 16, Goldman began his pro career. It was at a bantamweight. Now, weights then varied between 115 and 118 pounds. That's 52 to 53 some kilos. That fight was in a Brooklyn saloon. Now, he didn't fight in a stadium because New York then was unfriendly to pro fighting. How many bouts Goldman fought? Well, nobody knows. Goldman said over 400. But because boxing was at best quasi-legal in New York, most of the fights were, well, unofficial. About 130 fights were recorded, of which Charlie won 36, 20 by KO. He lost only 6, but the rest were either newspaper decisions or no decisions or draws. Goldman learned ringmanship from the great terrible Terry McGovern, and he was trained well enough to fight for the title. That was against the champion then, Johnny Coulon. Now, by the way, Coulon much later became famous to new generations. He did it by grabbing the necks and pressing, and then the right wrists of very big men, including Ali, Canera, Liston, and others. He did it in such a way that despite their much heavier weight and strength, they could not even lift the diminutive old Coulon. I'm going to do a video on that later. Whatever. After retiring from the ring, Goldman went into training fighters. One of his best students was a fellow Jewish welterweight named Artie Levine. Now, Artie once fought and slugged the rising great welterweight, Ray Robinson. He hit him so hard that Ray was able to rise only after 20 seconds had passed. Now, that was thanks to the referee, Jackie Davis's failure to start the count until 10 seconds passed. Now, that's a story in itself. But it was when Goldman, in the late 1940s, was hired by Al Weil, a manager of the very crude but powerful Slugger we're going to talk about, who's not long out of the Army. It was then that Goldman became famous to the general public, because the fighter's name was Marciano. Many believe that Goldman's influence is solely responsible for Marciano's undefeated 40-0 record. Now, he trained Rocky by not insisting that the awkward Marciano change his style, but rather refining his style. Now, you find an example in the movie Rocky. Do you remember Burgess Meredith's character, Mickey the trainer? Mickey's last name was Goldmill, very close to Goldman. And his background in the movie is similar to Goldman's. What he did was to tie a string to Rocky's ankles. That's to keep him from spreading his feet too far. Now, Goldman had a major task ahead of him in simply making Rocky a legitimate contender, let alone a champion. And that's because Marciano, one, came to boxing late. He's over 25 years of age. That's after a stint in the U.S. Army during World War II. Rocky, by the way, spent part of that time in the brig, another story that D.T. will cover. Number two, Rocky had very little boxing experience and, in fact, showed more promise in baseball than he did in the ring. He had been able to try out for the Chicago Cubs. Number three, Rocky lacked height at only 5 feet 10 inches, and he has a shorter reach than any heavyweight champion before or since. 69 inches, that's 175 centimeters. And he weighed about 180 pounds. But Goldman turned disadvantage into positives. He had Rocky crouch low, and that made it difficult to hit him. Now, that's something Archie Moore discovered when Moore's left hook was no longer effective against Rocky. And he had Rocky punch closer to an opponent, make the punches shorter. You already know about keeping the feet closer. That's number 3. And number 4, he had Rocky throw more combinations instead of going for just one big punch. Set up for the big Suzy Q punch. Now that proved to be most important when Marciano faced slick boxers. Example, Kid Matthews. Matthews is the last hurdle for Rocky to get over in order to get a title shot. Goldman, in the training camp, would spend hours working on Rocky's left hand. He tells him, if you're in the ring with a good boxer like Matthews, you jab first, then follow with the left hook. Now that, by the way, is exactly how Goldman himself as a fighter frustrated a very good Georgie Kitson. Now here's what happened with the fight with Matthews. Matthews made Marciano look terrible in the first round and got him very frustrated. But in the second round, Matthews, for whatever reason, pulled back. Now that's something his trainer said not to do. Probably he got cocky because he did so well in round 1 that he did what Billy Conn did against Joe Louis. Whatever, midway through the second, after a clinch, Rocky approached Matthews, throws a right, Matthews lurches back, and The Rock goes after him with a left jab, which lands, followed by 2 left hooks that, according to Goldman, and I'm quoting Goldman, damn near took his head off. The sports writer Mike Silver said of Charlie Goldman, he found a block of marble in a quarry and sculpted it into the Pieta. Now, Goldman's take on Marciano was this. A lot of people say Rocky don't look too good in there, but the guy on the ground, he don't look so good either. Well, that's the story. Did you like it? Then tap the thumb up button, subscribe, share the videos. You know the drill. Thank you.